Hello, welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, comment, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We would love to hear your ratings of the movies and shows we review.
Email us your audio file to recappingpodcast@gmail.com and we will play it during the show.
Or DM us on Instagram and we will post and read it on air.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Delora, new week. What's going on, honey?
Hey, Ashley. I'm happy to be here with you.
Same, girl. We have a interesting recap this week of a Hulu original series that just wrapped called 9 Perfect Strangers. Guys, if you have not checked this out yet, it was released serially. The first episode dropped August 18th, and the finale just dropped September 22nd. This is based on a novel by Liane Moriarty, one of my favorites, another collab with series creator David E. Kelley, who also did Big Little Lies, along with series creator John Henry Butterworth. Nicole Kidman and Melissa McCarthy serve as executive producers. Quick summary: 9 stressed city dwellers visit a boutique health and wellness resort that promises healing and transformation. The resort's director is a woman on a mission to reinvigorate their tired minds and bodies. Dum, dum, dum. All right, cast: Nicole Kidman as Masha, Melissa McCarthy as Frances, Michael Shannon as Napoleon Marconi, Asher Ketty as Heather Marconi, Grace Van Patten as Zoe Marconi, Luke Evans as Lars. Luke, I saw you on a cover recently. You're looking phenomenal. Regina Hall as Carmel, Showstopper, Bobby Cannavale as Tony, Samara Weaving as Jessica, who I remember from Smilf on Showtime, Melvin Gregg as Ben, who, when I looked up, because I was like, he looks a little familiar. He's been in Snowfall, Unreal, which Delora, you and I watched on Lifetime originally, and also Black AF, that was on Netflix. Tiffany Boone as Delilah, may recognize her from Little Fires Everywhere. She played the younger version of Kerry Washington's character, as well as The Shy, and Manny Jacinto as Yal. This is the first role I've seen him in since Jason on The Good Place. And I have to say, in this role, he was quite sexy. Okay, I really enjoyed this. I know there are some other honorable mentions of the cast, guys. Feel free to look them up. We're just going to keep it brief for the sake of time. All right, reviews. Rotten Tomatoes, 62% critic score, 59% audience score, 71% of Google users enjoyed this series. Delora, what is your grade for 9 Perfect Strangers?
All right, Ashley, I gave this series a C. It was fine. It was entertaining. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I felt like it was slightly anticlimactic, but I did really enjoy the performances, specifically Melissa McCarthy and what's his name? Luke Evans and Bobby. I really enjoyed them. I mean, it was well acted. I guess I should say all that because honestly, the cast is perfect, literally.
Absolutely.
How about you?
We are in a complete agreement. I debated this, but I ultimately gave it a C as well. As I mentioned, I love Liane Moriarty as a writer. I read the majority of her books, and I always enjoy seeing her projects brought to screen. But I did not read this one, so I was excited about the premise and what this mysterious story was all about. It was, to your point, another stellar cast. Especially standout for me was absolutely Regina Hall, who deserves an award because she creeped me the fuck out. But I can't say, to your point, that I felt a level of real satisfaction overall with my experience once it was all said and done. And I'll elaborate on that once we get to the end. So, spoiler alert, recap Nation, we are about to get into the good of Nine Perfect Strangers. So, Delora, we start the show with our core cast of characters, all in various stages of travel to a 10-day transformation retreat called Tranquillum. Per a discussion with one of our guest families, the Marconis, the Tranquillum experience has won 2 global wellness awards, mental wellness and social impact. They discuss the price break that they as a family got, and oh, how wonderful it is to put wellness over profit, as they speculated that others were probably paying thousands of dollars. So let's talk about our 9 perfect strangers. I already mentioned the Marconis, which are Napoleon's the dad, Heather's the mom, and Zoe is their 20-year-old daughter. We also have Jess and Ben, who are a married couple experiencing some issues, arrive in a beautiful yellow Lamborghini. Frances, a novelist who is losing her book contract when she arrives at Tranquillum. And I'll keep these other 3 short because we have a lot to discover about them over the course of the series. So I call him Jaded Lars, Upbeat Carmel, and Short-Tempered Tony.
Oh, very smart. I like that.
So first impressions amongst the guests were not great, Delora. We have Francis and Tony, who met before they made it to Tranquillum, on the side of the road. He thinks she's having a breakdown. She's not here for the judgment. And then we also have Carmel and Lars, who meet in a nearby corner store. Also not a great interaction. And then finally, Tony pulls into Tranquillum, honking at our couple, Ben and Jess. So my overall feeling to start was, I'm not feeling very tranquil at Tranquillum. Okay. We start to meet the staff. They're all attractive, calm, yogi type of vibes, with Yao and Delilah taking the lead. The surroundings are lush, resort-like. We're in California. So, Delora, give me your first impressions of our guests as well as our staff to start the series.
Well, for the guest, I was thinking, oh yeah, absolutely needed. This retreat is needed for every single one of them, right?
Yes.
I thought it was very interesting to see the different social economic station of each individual.
Very apparent by their vehicles.
Their vehicles, their manner of dress. I did think Jess and Ben were definitely Instagrammers, influencers, or something along those lines,
At least Jess. Yeah, at least Jess gives you that impression, for sure.
Yeah. But I knew I wasn't going to hate Tony, though. He seemed like a gruff guy for some reason or another. And Camille, she just seemed she just made me nervous. You know what I mean? Like, she was just a little too jittery or too wanting to please people. Like, it was a lot. So what about you?
I think that my first impressions were so reserved because I was so confused about what was happening at the very beginning. It was like, again, all of these staff members seem, very calm, very zen. What's really going on here? My mind started going to worst case scenario, like, are y'all about to kill these people? You know what I mean? Like, I felt so uneasy. Like, nothing about it was making me feel peaceful at all. And then to your point, yes, everybody was coming in. I could tell everybody had some level of an issue they were trying to resolve. And so just wanting to know a lot more, especially about the final 3 that we talked about, that we didn't really get a sense of what their point was to this, what their journey was for this. So let's get into it a little bit more. In the interaction between Lars and the staff, we find out guests had to submit medical records, had to submit to a blood draw every few days while they're there. Delora, would you see these as red flags or go with this as a part of your wellness journey?
They are absolutely red flags. Like, I didn't know if anybody was a medical or board certified medical physician, right? You're not taking my blood for what?
And doing what with it, right?
And they were so, it just seemed like it was a shroud of secrecy of what they were going to do with the blood. But they were like, well, you consented to it. And I'm like, no, I need specifics. Thanks. this is a part of me you're taking. Like,
and they tell different stories to each person who asked. That was another thing, was the inconsistency of like, oh, there's definitely a different purpose for this. You telling one person it's for this, you telling Melissa McCarthy, oh, it's to check your blood sugar.
Yep.
Like, y'all, like, this is not
And
consistent messaging.
the other thing too, I was wondering if there was levels to the treatment, because the room that Lars was in seemed very like medical, but then for Melissa's character Frances, she had like this lush room with the tub in the middle and everything like that. I was like, so are there levels to Tranquillum, or as
price
coming in
points,
brand new?
maybe at least? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure. I agree with you on that. Masha, the head of Tranquillum, appears very ethereal about halfway through episode 1 as Frances is breaking down crying in that room of hers. She gave me cult leader vibes more than angelic vibes when we first meet her. Delilah, as I mentioned, who is one of the head lead staff members, expresses concern about the energy of this group from the very beginning, which for me watching validated this complete uneasiness that I felt
everyone
about this experience that we're all about to go into. Like, y'all, it seems like the guests had a very specific idea of what they were getting themselves into, and I just didn't think that was what was really gonna happen. So come to find out, by the end of
I felt like everyone kind of like worshipped her in some ways too. They exalted her so much that I was just like,
it was
what
very
is the deal with her?
Cult leader. It was very cult leader. By the end of episode 1, Masha is promising a truly transformative experience to the guests in orientation, and relays her experience of coming from Russia, working like crazy in the US, and then being shot in a parking garage and revived by none other than Yao. For the guests, it seems a rude awakening, as they expected relaxation, maybe a little yoga. And Masha says, this is Tranquillum. I mean, to fuck with all of you. Delora, all I felt was concern. Continued concern for what was in store. She said
it with such a straight face. I'm like, what do you mean, ma'am? Like, what? But it's almost one of those things too, and I'm not revealing anything, but when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time kind of thing.
Yeah, she was setting the tone. And tone,
people were so dismissive of it,
The tone overall was ominous, and I think that was apparent. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a lot that's going to be revealed. So let's move on into more of the series. Slowly but surely, we find out all the guest stories and what brought them to Tranquillum. We see Zoe run out of orientation upset. In a conversation with Frances, we find out that her twin brother, Zach, died 3 years ago. Possibly the reason for their stay, right? She mentions her and her twin brother, though, weren't close. Tensions were very, very high in that orientation, as Masha, we find out, had taken items from some of their bags, like Tony's pills and alcohol. We also find out that she curates these groups that come to Tranquillum. It is intentional about who you are paired with when you come to this experience. And also that things just are not, to my point earlier, as expected. Masha, who seems so in control, begins getting anonymous death threats. Delora, did you have any inkling early on as to who might be threatening Masha's life?
No, not at all. My first assumptions were, somebody's on the grounds and she just doesn't know who that is. I'm not gonna lie, speaking to the ominous tone of the show, with her handpicking them and her going, disappearing and reappearing. And when she does disappear, she's watching them on video. I just feel like, what the heck is actually going on here? Like, it's just like, what are your intentions?
Intentions, absolutely. That's why I mentioned that she is someone who seems like she really enjoys being in control, because to your point, she even has the premises on camera and watches everybody. So when she starts getting these anonymous death threats, it's like, is this the first time this has happened? Is this a part of your past and some other shady stuff that went on with you getting shot?
She seems so calm about it, like it was inevitable in some ways too, right? Like, what type of stuff have you done?
Exactly.
To warrant this.
What's really going on, Masha? What's really good? Tony and Frances they keep rubbing up against each other in this series, right? And Tony almost kills Frances by tossing a grape in her mouth
Girl.
while she slept in the pool. I have to be honest
And
with you.
lying about it.
But it cracked me up. Like, their interactions
It was
cracked
funny.
me up. But she ended up opening up about her trauma, essentially, which is a guy named Paul that she fell in love with online who conned her out of money. I think they go on to say it was like $128K that he conned her out of with a fake
I thought it was just 10 grand, but
no, 128,000. Yeah. Fake child who had a fake illness. Where is Neve when you need him, is what I put in my notes. Okay. This was horrible catfish.
Because speaking of first impressions, especially for someone like Frances got the drip. She was carrying the Louis bag. She had the Chanel slides. She was always, you could tell she was a successful woman, right?
Mm-hmm. She's a novelist.
But then at the same time, you in a way saw her vulnerability in the sense of like, it's not surprising that she got caught up, right? Like, she wanted to be loved. She wanted to love someone, and she fell for her own fairy tale. She fell for fiction, She
fell for that okie doke for sure. I mean, she talks about the fact that she's twice divorced. Obviously, she's hitting a very big rough patch in her career. And imagine when you've set your life up such where career is number one for you. I can only imagine how scary it is when that idea of failure, because when she's headed to Tranquillum, she gets the call to say your publishers want to buy you out of your book deal, which means possibly, it's a wrap on her career as she's known it. So when this whole scenario came up with Paul, my thought was, well, damn, you're somebody probably who was really wanting to have that work-life balance. You've been so successful. You wanted the love as a part of it, and you got taken for such a ride. Like, I can only imagine how that must have felt for Frances. So I felt really bad for Frances when we started the series. I'll say that. By episode 3, tensions have escalated to a physical altercation between Lars and Carmel. She lunged and choked him out of it after some antagonism.
So quickly. Yeah, Lars obviously was the cynic of the group, right?
He was the asshole.
I did not expect her to be so unnerved so quickly, Like, I actually laughed out loud at that part. I actually put in my notes, I'm like, Carmel jumped over the table, blah, ha, 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 ha. That's how much I laughed, because I just was not ready for that. It was so unexpected.
I didn't laugh, but I was like, this is the underlying true Carmel. Like, I shouldn't even say it like that. It's not that she was not possibly still a nice person, but it was like, this is the tension that we're feeling that like underlies that character. She has some rage issues, clearly. All the guests they have to eat breakfast together every day. Yes. And somebody says something that gets in your skin and you lunge at, like, you're about to choke this man out. And that was the first of, as we'll see, multiple incidents with Carmel with violence. So this was just a glimpse.
and technically it's so, unexpected, because she just seems like a normal housewife, right? You would never expect that behavior out of her.
Thank you for saying that, because that reminded me of something I was going to say again about Frances, was to your point about her being, somebody who's looking for love. She also said remember in the conversation with Carmel, she said, oh, I don't do that. Remember, she was like, oh, are you on the phone with your kids? Oh, I don't do that. I do things for a living. And so It was also the dismissiveness of the lifestyle that she may have always wanted. That was like interesting to me. It was an interesting exchange.
But that's what people do. They belittle the things that they may be insecure about, right?
That's a great point. More revelations, Delora. The Marconi son, Zach, actually committed suicide.
Woo.
Ben figured out and revealed who Tony really is, because Tony never wanted anybody to know what was going on with him. He was a former star tight end for the San Francisco 49ers who blew out his knee, ended his career abruptly. Ben won $22 million from the lottery, but feels purposeless.
Whew.
Carmel's husband left her for a younger woman. Jess is very insecure and addicted to social media for validation. And Heather wants her husband to have an affair because she's essentially lost interest in sex as well as life, honestly, since the suicide of her son.
Really? See, with Heather, I didn't catch that. I thought he didn't want to sleep with her. So got it.
Yeah, she said, oh, I want him to have an affair. I want him to have an affair with one of you while we're here.
I remember that part, but I didn't know if she was like over him or something. But okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, she's just depressed. The guys killing Masha's goat in episode 3 was a bit of a Lord of the Flies moment to me. But to be honest, not giving them food was a no-go as well. I'm not sure I could have ate that goat though. That looked disgusting. Could you have eaten that goat?
Girl, I was cracking up how they had that goat roasting. I literally put in my notes, WTF with the roasting goat, like with
Gross.
the eyes and everything. I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you. And honestly, are people that hungry though, Ashley? They just weren't supposed to eat from like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
If first of all, we haven't gotten to the fact that they're being drugged. I'm going to get to that in just a second, but they are not within their right minds. That's one thing. Then they're being starved. And every time they think they're getting some food, it's like, this is all because basically they have to live off the land. It's Earth Day. It's an episode that's focused on Earth Day. They have to live off the land. So you're telling me all I'm going to eat is nuts and berries all day? And at 7 p.m. for dinner, all I'm going to eat is another smoothie? No.
Yeah.
Killing something.
Well, actually, that's another thing too, because I'm like, what is this place where they keep making these promises? And at this point, though, the audience became familiar with the term "quote unquote" protocol. So, like,
yes.
What is this protocol to where you're gaslighting people and thinking there's fruits and berries in the forest when there's literally one freaking avocado on a tree? That's not even right. So I just feel like I don't understand what the motivations were again. So,
and I don't even like avocado, so it would have done nothing for my life.
I love avocado. It's amazing.
I know, I'm one of the rare few. I know.
Healthy fats.
Masha, to your point, has been insistent on starting the guests on a quote unquote protocol, aka Dolores. She's drugging them without their knowledge or consent. She admits to micro dosing all but Jess and Ben, and of course Zoe, because she's underage, with an illegal drug, psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms. People were understandably upset. The final guest reveal
that Marcus and Emily were upset when they were drugged with cocaine in their margaritas. From last week's recap, Vacation Friend.
Please check that if you have not already. But the final guest reveal comes with this too. At the beginning of episode 4, Lars is actually an investigative journalist, Delora, and he's here to expose Tranquillum and expose Masha. But Masha's all for it. She's like, hey, I know about it. Do your thing. What would your reaction have been to this revelation about being drugged?
I would be absolutely pissed. I mean, part of me at the same time also thought, well, this is like an alternative medicine kind of thing. So it's not surprising that the drug of choice are mushrooms. You know what I mean? And but I also knew something was up with the smoothies because, you know, looking at the direction, the way they always pan the camera to the blender, and honestly, the vibrancy of some of that fruit, I was like, I want some of that. But yeah, I would not have been happy. I'm like, unless this was in some, you know, fine print. What?
The same as I said on Vacation Friends, we fighting. Like, I don't understand this idea of people doing things against your will and you just being like, well, I guess she may know what she's doing and it's for the best, because we see that nobody actually leaves. Like, yeah, some people seem upset, like Francis, like Tony, they question it, but nobody actually leaves.
But they needed some real help, Ashley.
Okay, help is one thing, but ma'am, I don't do drugs. I'm not a drug person. So
neither am I.
And I don't know your efficacy. I don't know,
Yes,
if
yes.
you really know what you're doing. So
And to my point earlier, there's no board certified doctors in the place. So like, who's administering it? How do I know they're, capable, competent in doing so? And I'm not going to be dead in the trees in a couple of days?
we're Black. We have a radar that goes off in many a situation. And for me, this would be another one because I just don't understand. Like, would I even be in my right mind at this point to make this decision? I'm already on drugs, Delora.
Yeah, but to your point, the people started justifying them being there. I mean, Napoleon saying he didn't need his CPAC for the night, and I think he and his wife got it on that night. So
Seemed like they were doing better indeed. So again, nobody leaves. Everybody is going to go along for this ride. So as a part of the staff, we see some intermingling between Masha and Yao and Delilah. It seems she's having relations with Yao. Seems to be like it's creating some jealousy and some tension.
this is where the cult situation comes into play very well because the way again they exalted Masha, and it's almost like she could do no wrong.
Even fucking
But
my man. Yeah.
exactly. And that's what a lot of cult leaders do is like, oh, well, I'm sharing myself with, the congregation. Obviously, you see it more often with men, right? And unfortunately, young women. But it's interesting to see that dynamic with the woman at the helm and her in this free love situation.
Absolutely. What did you think of the exercise with the dummy and sword that both Francis and Carmel seemed to get some level of catharsis out of, but Napoleon thought was scary AF. He was ready to go. Did you find this cathartic or scary?
Well, I was also kind of like, are you scared because you saw a Black woman doing that? Like the fear
Oh,
came then, but Francis did the same thing. I'm sorry. Anyway,
the
um,
point.
I felt like you need to smash some shit up every once in a while.
That's why there are those rooms where you literally can go put on a hard hat and some scrubs or whatever onesie and go beat the shit out of something, because it did seem cathartic to me. I was like, hey, give me that sword. I'm ready. I'm ready to go
I'm
off.
ready. It's so funny because I'm not a major drinker, but I think I drank a while ago and I was stressed actually. And I was like, oh, I know why people drink now. like it's just
No.
something about like, oh, the edge is off just a little bit, but me, I face my problems head on all the time. So
Yeah, girl. Don't we all? I hope I never get dependent on a substance to help
yeah,
cope through life.
no,
That's when you do start to have those problems, right?
absolutely.
But yeah, I thought it seemed hella cathartic to me. And they both had reason to be, because again,
Yes.
Francis with Paul, Carmel with her ex-husband, it was a lot. At Jess's insistence, she and Ben begin being dosed because again, they were left out of that process for whatever reason.
Was never really cleared up. I thought that was
No,
interesting.
it was never explained why they or Masha felt like they didn't need it.
Ooh, I'll bring it up a little bit later. What my theory maybe.
Okay.
I'll bring it up later.
But because Jess was insistent, they ended up getting dosed with MDMA, aka Molly, which Yao says is better for couples. So in a flashback, we see Tony get an altercation with a man antagonizing him at a bar a year after he was forced to retire from the NFL. And Tony accidentally kills him, Delora. That is his true trauma.
Ooh, that's the one thing about this show that I thought was very interesting. We saw each stranger, quote unquote, reliving their trauma over and over and over again. And it's a lot to take in, you know what I mean? And yeah, it gives reason for their behaviors or dependencies in some cases. But my deal is with Tony, exactly. And with Tony, it's like, sir, why are we reliving all of these things? I mean, granted, he went through a lot, right?
And he
but
was going
it was
through
tough.
withdrawals because he was addicted to oxy and was alcoholic when he arrived. So they withdrew him from the oxy, and now he's vividly reliving some of this stuff. To your point, though, I kept wondering, is this for the best? This would drive some people insane. Like, I don't think reliving trauma over and over again
It's
helps everybody.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, it's like that delicate balance of, because human nature wants to forget it. So sometimes it's so buried, but it's still triggered, like some people say, in our bodies, or it manifests itself in other ways. So in some ways you do have to face it, but it's like finding healthier ways of coping, I think, is the ultimate goal, right?
Absolutely. Masha is upping the dosages by the end of episode 4, much to Delilah's continued concern. We discovered that Delilah is bipolar and is also drinking drug smoothies as a condition of her employment, but Delilah ain't here for the shenanigans. She basically threatens Masha. says essentially, if you do things for these guests without telling me about it again, there's gonna be a problem. We also see the threats on Masha heighten to wrap episode 4. What were you gonna say, Delora, about upping the dosages?
I was just so fascinated to see that her own employees needed dosages. You know what I mean? And in some ways it's kind of comforting because they know what they're doing, right? So it's not like a not just you, not me kind of thing. But everybody got something. I'm not saying that, but I'm like, so everybody's tied up in this place. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was interesting to me was the idea that the staff, it's not like they just got hired. It seems like they all possibly went through the Tranquillum experience or had some form of an experience that brought them to Tranquillum, with Yao being the one who helped her, save her from dying, with Delilah possibly going through things to be able to get to this point. Like, they're not just hired hands. They have a more intimate relationship with Masha than that.
Which makes it kind of cult-like, right?
It is, like I said,
they have seen the light.
From jump.
They have seen the journey, and they are on the other side.
Super culty. In a flashback to start episode 5, we see glimpses that a previous Tranquillum guest appears to have died. Delilah looked particularly traumatized. My thought was, what all is Masha hiding? Because at this point, we had heard no mention of any issues or guests who had been injured or harmed throughout this Tranquillum experience.
And everyone, all the strangers, were drinking her freaking Kool-Aid.
So hard, putting their lives literally into her hands. It's Zoe's 21st birthday, and she begins taking her smoothie dose and seeing her deceased brother, who she indeed was lying about being close to for whatever reason. Guest reactions to this increase in dosage are on the light side, talking about having more vivid dreams, like Lars giving birth. And on the dark side, Carmel stabbing the table with a fork over mention of her wedding song, and Frances passing out in her breakfast and hallucinating a violent altercation with Catfish Paul. By the way, Catfish Paul is real life husband Ben Falcone, who always has to have cameos in these projects.
In her movies. Guess what? Everybody eats,
Melissa said, I'm an executive producer, put my husband in this show. Were you concerned at all about the possibilities of this accelerated increase in doses? Because I think the reason why Delilah is expressing concern is not only the fact that we see that previous guest died, but also there seems to be some sense of urgency that Masha has with this group that maybe she hasn't exhibited previously.
Yeah, it just seemed like Masha was throwing all of her normal protocol out of the window, because even when we were first introduced to the protocol, Yao and Delilah, they were like, already now? But yeah, I never really got the sense of urgency. I mean, originally my thought was it has something to do with whoever's haunting Masha. Maybe she feels like she has to do something before, because again, it seemed like she it seems like she must have done something or known that she's done something that she was going to get got one day, right? So it's like, well, let's hurry this up with this group because this group is special and I picked them because they were especially broken or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was fascinating.
It continued to make me question again her genuineness and what her ultimate goal was, because are you on some form of a timeline because there's something you are wanting to get out of this scenario? Like, what ultimately do you want to happen to these guests? You make it seem like it's all about them, but there's, again, a lot that Masha is not telling these people.
Well, at this point in the series too, Masha, her etherealness or her command starts to really wither away slowly but surely. Like, she's losing her cool. She out here taking people's mans and everything, you know.
We don't know how long that throuple's been going on, but the tension.
Not Theo. Yo seemed very comfortable with the arrangement.
For sure. The tension between them is actually a bit more complex, though, because it seems Masha is possibly having relations with Delilah as well when they have an intimate kiss out in the field, the yard, wherever we are. And Yao has no idea. Delilah requests a stop to the Masha-Yao relationship. But I have to be honest, in the moment, I was confused about which aspect actually bothered her. Was she jealous because she wanted Masha? Was she jealous because she wanted Yao? I was not sure. But that sex scene with them just running their hands in the air over each other was wild.
Well, that's so funny because I thought the same thing too. I'm like, where's the jealousy coming from? As you just said, is it for him or for her? You know?
Couldn't tell just yet. By episode 6, Masha asked Lars to record and document everything he sees on the heels of realizing she can control their dreams. And yet again, ups their dosage at breakfast, this time in an optional tea. They all took it and they were also assigned a buddy. So I felt like, oh, here we go. This is about to be a ride, as if it has not already been. Now, at this point, Delora, I'm again trying to figure out Masha's endgame and her genuineness, but we have a huge Carmel revelation in that Masha had an affair with her husband, and she knew that that's why Carmel came to Tranquillum.
Wow.
Carmel claims she came to study her in hopes her husband might want her back. Masha explains that he was nothing to her, that she had affairs with married men who would not get attached.
Wow. That was some revelation, I have to say. And again, this also made me think of, again, Masha being on some boss-ish, like, you know, you did some D's out here in these streets. It's like almost like a mob boss. You know, mob bosses are never surprised when people come for them, you know?
If they were doing blood work, what made Carmel think she was going to be able to hide who her ex-husband was? Like, that was the thing that I found interesting.
What do you mean?
Did Carmel think that there was not a possibility that Masha would have known who her ex-husband was, therefore knowing that she had had an affair with him? Because they said they submitted medical records, which means they had to have known or asked for a lot from these guests.
Yeah, Camille was very interesting, though, because it's just like, she dealt with so much insecurity, but then the rage comes out so fiercely that it's like, so what is your angle? Do you know what you're doing? Like, is this a front? Like, I don't understand.
Carmel was a little terrifying to me, even at this point. I was like, Masha, do you know what you're getting yourself into? Like, this is a woman scorned.
But again, the one thing that Masha was pretty consistent on was her message, right? I can help you. Even if something wasn't necessarily proven. She stated, I can help you, you know, with her in and out Russian accent.
Francis and Tony, who'd been growing closer and closer, take their relationships to the next level while they're drugged on this tea. Jessica imagines her nose falling off, and the Marconis all encounter Zach, which sends Heather into a psychotic breakdown and severe
Ooh.
blame for his death, as suicidal ideation, we find out, was a side effect of his asthma medications. And to Napoleon's point, she scours labels of everything, even things that she eats. So now, after finding this out, Napoleon, her husband, he blames her too for their son's death. Masha offers to be a guide to the Marconis using psychedelics as an option to see and spend time with Zach. This is ultimately why Masha chose them, right? By the end of episode 6, we see Masha walking behind a little girl on a bike, only to see her go out in traffic and get hit by a car. It was her daughter who died. Delora, was this an aha moment for you about possibly what Masha's goals were, or were you still trying to figure it out after this episode?
At this part of the season, I think the aha mainly came from the fact that we saw, or at least understood, Masha's humanity, right? When she first came on the scene, she just seemed untouchable, literally. But by this part of the series, we realized that she was royally effed up, just like everybody else in in Tranquillum, okay? Like, she was dealing with layers of trauma as well, major issues, death of a child, near-death experiences. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at by any means. So yeah, if anything, it just showed it made me understand why she wanted to help people, because maybe she was able to find some serious coping mechanisms to get over the type of trauma that she dealt with.
That's a great point. As Frances notes, other guests seem to be progressing and finding some level of healing, but Carmel is deteriorating. She had expressed
So
concern,
obvious. So
she had
obvious.
expressed concern to Masha as she was already on psych meds. And we see her violently attack Masha, calling her Lillian, which is her ex's new wife, to start episode 7. She ends up being sedated and locked in her room for safety. The Marconis debate the drugging, with Zoe trying to be the voice of reason. What Masha fails to mention is that guest that died a year prior tried this same drugging, and his family sued. When the Marconis start to have second thoughts, Masha decides to also take the protocol and be their guide to show them that it's safe. Delilah has had enough, Delora. She leaves. She barrels through the fence to go to the cops. She tries to get Yao to come with her. He won't listen. She does not feel like what's happening is safe and that it is in the guest's best interest anymore. We end episode 7 on a chilling note. Carmel tells Masha she should be in a real hospital and it's not safe for her to be around, ultimately revealing her identity as Masha's shooter with a creepy AF fake eye. Give Regina an award for this performance, because she gave me chills.
Absolutely.
Did
So
you?
Terrifying.
Did you already figure this out on your watch?
That's a great question. I did not. Even after we were informed that Masha was Carmel's husband's first affair, right?
Yep.
It still didn't occur to me. If anything, I thought it might have been Carmel's brother or something. I just still didn't think it was her, even though she has some serious rage issues, right? But nope, didn't cross my mind at all.
Woo, my first watch through, the Carmel revelation of being her shooter rocked me to my core. When I tell you I turned it off, I slept with the light on that night. She freaked, like when I tell you, she really, like, Regina really, really freaked me out. I had to try to think about her roles and other things. For some reason, it just got to me so bad.
Yeah.
But then the second time I watched it, I recognized her in the flashbacks, because obviously hindsight is 2020 and it all makes sense your second watch through, right? So let's move on to our grand finale. Carmel reveals her intention that day was only to scare Masha, but she dismissed her, right? She tried to throw money at her, and that really put Carmel over the edge. Carmel has ultimately also been the one sending her the death threats while they've been there. She said she wanted to make Masha feel what it's like to lose control. But Delora, instead of calling the cops, as Carmel tells her to, Masha forgives her. Delora, are you calling the cops?
Yeah,
I mean,
why wouldn't I?
That's a lot. That's a lot, ma'am. That's a lot.
He has this scar that they put in front and center. I mean, you can't miss it, in the middle of her chest. Granted, that was a, symbol of her transformation and everything, right? But yeah, I'm calling the cops or the insane asylum. This ain't well.
In that moment, I was like, oh, wow, Masha, you may be more off the rails than Carmel is, because this woman literally alone in this room just told you that she shot you and almost killed you. And she puts this.
Why did she find the need to put on that freaking contact?
Because she needed to prove. Oh, it's giving me chills just even talking about it. She needed to prove her point because Masha just was not getting it. But the fact that Masha was just so easily like, listen, I can still help you. All of this is because of you. Like, Masha, you either better than me or you're out of your fucking mind.
Either or.
Either or. There's no in between. Lars knew and revealed the truth to the Marconis about Masha's daughter. When she was shot and died, she said she felt and saw her daughter and has been chasing that ever since. Now, Delora, while he was given revelations, why didn't Lars also reveal the truth to the Marconis about the guest's death while he was at it? He sure did not.
I thought Napoleon adds like, well, has this ever been done successfully before or something like that?
She lies.
But they had already, right, but they had already taken the concoction or whatever. So
yeah, and she lies. The only thing that Lars revealed was the daughter. And I was like, well, if you're being so forthcoming, you're not going to tell them the truth about this man dying? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that was out of pity because, at this point of the series, Lars became my favorite character.
To me, it was extremely unethical. I was like, I get that you're a journalist, but that's super unethical. You're supposed to be a truth teller at the end of the day.
But I'm saying, like, maybe he factored in, like, let's not have these people panic.
Since they already took it.
Yes. That's my only rationale.
Masha had also opened up to Frances previously about her daughter and said that her death was the reason why she left Russia, and that being a mother was the only time she liked who she was. She hadn't been able to truly see and feel her again until her experience with the Marconis. The protocol worked for the Marconis as well, who were also able to connect with Zach as a family one final time to experience the closure they needed to move forward. Napoleon had a bit of a scary reaction though, but thankfully everybody made it out alive. That final lockdown with all the guests, except for the Marconis, that simulated a near-death fire experience was thankfully the final experience that they had to go through, because they'd have been through a lot, right? Frances,
and they really didn't inform them very well.
No, Frances, Tony, Jess, and Ben had actually tried to leave right before that, right? And they realized that their cars had disappeared. So it was time to go. It was a wrap. Masha is taken in by the police, and the guests are questioned as we kind of wrap everything up. But otherwise, the season ends quite neatly, in my opinion. Delilah and Yao leave and are working for the Peace Corps. Lars writes his piece for the New Yorker and reunites with his ex Ray and has a child. Carmel becomes some form of a group therapist herself. Jess and Ben end up running Tranquillum, which I hadn't realized until I read an article in which they also mentioned that they had originally considered splitting them up to end the series, but that David E. Kelley just liked them too much to do so. The Marconis have found peace as a family again. Tony and Frances end up together along with his daughters in that beautiful Labradoodle that they had talked about. Frances writes a book titled, surprise, surprise, 9 Perfect Strangers, which we see Masha has a copy of as she drives off in Ben's yellow Lambo, clearly still taking psychedelics, as we also see her daughter is in the passenger seat. Delora, please give me your final thoughts on 9 Perfect Strangers.
It was literally a trip. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought they were well acted. I shipped Tony and Francis so hard, and I love
Yes.
the interaction. When he told her, like, oh, all I want to do is get out of here, paint, and go, take you out
Take
to
you to
dinner.
dinner.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's just small stuff. Loved it, loved it, loved it.
Also,
And
when they
that's
were in the simulation, she said, I think I'm gonna be giving you my house key pretty soon. I was like, okay, Francis.
Okay, sis. This is how you got in trouble last time, but it's okay.
She considered that. She considered it.
I really love Lars. Like, I loved how blunt he was, and how, like, I don't know. I liked his arc. I liked his character arc, being so rough and hated everything, and then really opening up with the group. I ultimately, I truly enjoy seeing how different everyone was, and just seeing how they really grew together in this insane experience. And the last thing I'm going to say is, the church side of me came out watching this, because these desperate people put so much faith in a woman who frankly was insane, because she had gone through so much. You know what I mean? Just because she posed, people get so fooled by, like, fancy environments and how you present yourself. They get caught up where the core of it all is she doesn't have it. And so the church side of me was that thinking of that song, like, um Christ the solid rock I stand, all other grounds are sinking sands. Like, this whole wellness situation is all man-made and can fall apart very easily. It has no true foundation other than quote unquote wellness. And what is that exactly? So
That's well said, Delora, because to your point, what I thought especially was my first original thought in the cult like experience of this whole thing. And this is why people join Scientology. This is how people get caught up in a lot of shenanigans that I've watched many a documentary on, because people are trying to find this higher self, this sense of connectedness, this sense of purpose, and you get caught up and you get sold into other people's ideas of what that may mean, even if it's not necessarily to your benefit. Again, we do see this wrapped up nicely, which is one of the reasons why, to me, it gets a C, because I just felt like this is a bunch of bullshit at the end of the day. This would not have worked for everybody. It would not have turned out perfectly.
Somebody would have died. I hate to say it, but yeah.
And I just feel like, for the sake of cinematic and a book and all that, I get they need to wrap it up, but I don't buy into this whatsoever, in terms of everybody can get drugged, everybody can be put on different formulas, and we're all gonna find our happily ever after.
Our best selves.
Yeah, I'm not buying what they're selling. But my final thought too was, why did Masha inevitably sell Tranquillum? Was it because she felt fulfilled when she reconnected with her daughter, and that was her ultimate purpose? And just kind of, unfortunately for Masha, now she's just gonna live in the past forever. It's kind of sad. She's kind of the one story that was a little bit sad, because everybody else is moving forward and she's just living in the past. So,
and I actually did put that in my notes, like, how many lives did Marcia live? Like, she lived so many iterations. You know what I mean?
Don't know. But ultimately, what I think that the show was lacking for me, again, was a little bit more nuance and a little bit more diversity in the way that everything kind of wrapped up. So, if nothing else, Laura, that is our recap of 9 Perfect Strangers, girl. So we can move on into our hidden gems of the week. Hit me with your hidden gems.
Yay! Yes. So I have 3 hidden gems this week. The first being the 60-minute exclusive Facebook whistleblower interview. It is found on YouTube. Fantastic interview, not very long, so it'll be easy watch. But again, this interview came out on Sunday. Monday, Facebook was down for 6 hours. That's all I got to say to that. My second hidden gem is a song. So we are coming out of Paris Fashion Week, and Olivier, the head of Beaumont, one of his Instagram videos featured, models walking the runway and this bomb ass song. This song is called Spirit X. It's by an artist named Alewya. She's Ethiopian and Egyptian, and the song is fire. It's a bit of I don't know how to explain it. It's up tempo. It feels funky. It's amazing. I loved it. You should check it out. And my final hidden gem this week, if you don't know, Ashley and I are major The View fans. And because this is their historic 25 year, because they say that every morning before the show.
With the background.
Right. They created a podcast because why not, right? Everyone has podcasts, Ashley. So this particular podcast is called Behind the Table, and it features interviews between the co-hosts. And for me, I've been watching The View for some years, and some of this tea is kind of good. I'm like, yo, is that what happened? So the more recent episode is between Whoopi Goldberg and one of my faves, Nicole Wallace. She did not last very long, unfortunately, but apparently they're best friends. Like Whoopi doesn't have many friends, and Nicole Wallace is one. Didn't know that. Apparently Rosie has major issues with Whoopi, which I had no idea. So the very first episode was with Meredith Vieira and Joy Behar. Their conversation was fun because they were the original OGs, but gotta love the Black Girl Magic from episode 2 with Sherry Shepherd and Sunny Hostin. It was so good. Sherry is amazing and funny, and again, they have a relationship, her and Sunny. So it's just fun to see the relationships between past and present hosts and getting all the behind the scenes stories and who gets along, who doesn't. It's not that juicy, but you get some good nuggets here and there. So that's it for my hidden gems. What are your hidden gems this week, Ashley?
My first one is ironic because it's about wellness. And it's a podcast. It's called Dropping Gems with Devi Brown. I got turned on to this when Devi was a guest on Higher podcast. Learning. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, she does not give me the same vibes as Masha whatsoever. She's a well-being educator. Again, fell into it. I just enjoy her overall energy and her vibe. Let me even start there. She works for like the Chopra Wellness Institute, a bunch of other things that may not be the exact title, but she definitely is someone that I'm enjoying understanding her thoughts on overall, mindfulness and retreats and different things that I know people go on and experience to try to be one's best self. Again, I am a discerning person. I'm a critical thinker. So I don't know how much I'm going to sip on the Kool-Aid, but I enjoy listening and absorbing some of it. So that is Dropping Gems with Devi Brown podcast. My second is Blood and Water, which is back for season 2 on Netflix. This may have been a hidden gem previously from one of us. I can't remember at this point.
Yeah, but I think it might have been mine because I had binged it like last year.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but season 2 I'm into so far. The show is located overall in Cape Town, South Africa, focuses on a teen who enrolled at a private school suspecting another student is her sister who was abducted at birth. So we get a little bit more continuation of that so far into season 2. No spoilers, but it is definitely one to watch. So that is Blood and Water on Netflix. And that is it for me as well. Guys, we'll be back with a new episode of Hot Topics and Headlines. Be blessed. Live your best life. We will see you guys then.
Yes. Bye.